Alright, I guess we gotta do this, Alf. Alright, everyone. Welcome to the Tonto's Demise, Week 4. Wait, we're getting... What's going on here? We're doing this again? Somebody's buzzing in here early. Let me see what's going on here. I didn't even know we were on... This was on a Zoom. Like, what's going on? Let me see what's going on. I think, okay. Let's see, we got something coming up. Oh, it's Detling. Detling, what's up, buddy? Well, thanks, Brian. I'm Detling, aka Yinzergeist. I'm not Brian. Tonto Bowls 1, 3, and some other number in the teens champion. You know, it's not easy being on top, but I sure make it look that way. Takes a steady diet of high fiber, low sleep, and a stress-maxed workday. Murderers, Brian! I'm surrounded by cold-blooded killers. They'll slit your throat and toss you into Monongahela for $20 and a box of chocolates. Speaking of chocolates, Dove chocolates. Cooper Cup, have you seen that NFL commercial where the guy's in bed and his wife watches him? He says, "I love you, Josh Allen," in his sleep. That's me, Brian. That's me. Brogan is like, "What did you say?" I said, "I love you lots, Brogan." And I'm sitting at the top, feeling good, and you know who's at the bottom, Brian? Craig. Springfield Isotopes, winless, wizard my ass. See what happens when you don't have Patrick Mahomes throwing bombs to Tyreek Hill every week? Tyreek Hill is a joke. His team's a straight-up dumpster fire, Brian. I don't see him winning any games this year. Maybe he's like Jimmy Huber, and so busy planning a wedding that he just doesn't care about his team. He's going to go 1-12 like Jimmy did that year. Although if Craig's planning a wedding or something, he's certainly keeping it a secret. I don't think anyone knows about it, or Jim Crick would have said something. Sally would have said something. He's a strange kid, but I love him. All the way back to 4th grade, when it was either him or Foy, all decked out head to toe in his Washington Redskins sweatpants and sweatshirt and his flaming red hair. I knew immediately that kid was going to be a pain in my ass for a long time to come. All right, I tire of your banter, Detling. Goodbye. Let's get him out of here. Whew, that was a lot. Man, Detling, save it for the recap, or the podcast. Save it for the podcast video, the preview video. Jeez, getting a lot to get off your chest there. Man, this isn't your show. Didn't even invite you. You just showed up. And you called me Brian like 5 times. Anyway, welcome to the Tonto's Demise Week 4 recap. A couple big scores this week. And a lot of middling scores. A lot of teams around the 150 area. So a couple guys, actually had 3 teams this week go over 200. Some big performances there, but yeah. Other than, if you're not getting lucky with those big performances, like this week it was all those guys. You pretty much all had players in the Seattle Lions game. That's pretty much where a lot of those big points came from. If you were somehow involved in that, much like the Ravens-Dolphins game in week 2, if you had a piece of that, you had a big score. But other than that, nobody else really stands out this week. So let's jump right into it with our defending champion, Shawshank Athletics, going up against Saquon It Ain't So. Shawshank trying to move to 3-1, while Saquon was trying to move to avoid going to 1-3. And this matchup came down to Monday night. Let's see. I think Jay's team. Jay had Kittle. Shawshank had the Rams defense and Allen Robinson. Probably should have won this matchup. 2 against 1. Just Kittle. But Saquon It Ain't So comes out on top in this matchup. The final score, And I double-checked. Haven't seen any changes here. Went over your defensive scores and your kicker scores again. Double-checked it last night to make sure. So as far as I know, unless something changes, this should be correct. Saquon, 155.9. Shawshank, 155.5. For Saquon, Burrow goes for 43. A.J. Brown, 14.5. Boyd, 9. Tyler Boyd had... I was trying to figure out how Tyler Boyd had 8.85. But he had a pass. He threw a pass completion for some yards there. That's how he had an unusual... You never see a quarterback or a non-receiver with a .05 there number in his score there. So he threw a completion there. Forgot about that on Thursday night. Kirk only 8.5. Kareem Hunt same thing, 8.5. Dobbins comes back from his injury finally. Seems like that guy's been forever injured. Actually scores 2 touchdowns, goes for 22.5. Freiermuth, 15.5. In the flex again was Kittle, and he got you 4.4. Fortunately, it was just enough, that 0.4. He did have a touchdown almost. I believe it was to overturn. He couldn't get his second foot down, or else this one would not have been quite as painful for Shawshank. Tucker gets about 12 points, and the Packers defense, Yahoo says 13. Looked like the actual score was about 19, maybe, at the most. Yeah, because I think Tucker didn't actually do... I think we added 6 points, 6 point something to you. 6.3 looks like. Yeah, it was just enough to get past Shawshank. He has Herbert go for 54.5. Jamar Chase, only 12. Juju, 9.5. Allen Robinson, said one of your Monday night guys. He had a touchdown, or he had an end zone pass thrown to him, at least one there, but didn't do too much. But yeah, yikes. Only 2 for 7. 2.7 points for Robinson. Take a look at Josh's bench. He would have been better off starting pretty much any other of his wide receivers this week who actually played. Corey Davis or Dotson from the Commanders. Yes, Allen Robinson might be getting moved to the bench here until further notice if I am Shawshank Athletics. Said Davis, and I think Dotson's actually hurt now. You got Q's all over your lineup here, Josh, so we'll see what happens there. Derrick Henry, over 100 yards and a touchdown, 26.5 points. Breece Hall scores the game-winning touchdown that beats the Steelers. Hope you're happy, Josh. 15.8. Kyle Pitts, only 1 catch for 25 yards, 3.5 points. Lockett in the flex, 13. Suck up your kicker, only 1 field goal, couple PATs. He gets you about 8.5 points. And again, the Rams defense, they only got you 9, I believe. If you would have started the Chiefs, you would have been much better starting the Chiefs defense. Even though they gave up a ton of points and yards, I think they would have gotten you just from the turnovers and the win a little bit more than 9 points, at least 10, I think. It looks like they had 2 turnovers and a sack. That's 7 points. The win gets you 10 points, plus a little bit of yardage there. But yeah, the Rams defense looks like they didn't really get you much of anything at all. No sacks, no turnovers, nothing. And that cost you, as Yahoo says, 6. You only got 9, and yeah, you lost by 0.4. Not the smallest margin of defeat ever in the league, but it doesn't get much smaller than that. That's what she said. And both teams are now 2-2, with Jay in 7th place and Josh in 10th place. Let's go right on down the line, on my line here. We got the Springfield Isotopes trying to get their first victory, going up against Hillbillies on PCP, trying to avoid dropping to 1-3. And Hillbillies on PCP able to do it, dropping the Topes to 0-4. For Hillbillies, Carson Wentz, 32. Devontae, 19.5. Deontay, 4.5. Drake, 3.5. Jeff Wilson, 13.5. Deontay Harris, I think, I can remember, Damian Harris, can never remember that guy's name for some reason. 15.5. Kelsey, 24. Picked up and played Taysom Hill Sunday morning. Only got 8 points there, basically thanks to a touchdown. Didn't even realize that happened. You made that move till way later on. If you had played, so I think you had Palmer in there before you really anything. Actually, the best play looks like it would have been DJ Moore. You had Valdez-Scantling in there a little bit for a while to try to get those Kansas City receivers in to counterbalance my Mahomes, which ended up working because he pretty much threw most of his passes and yardage and a touchdown to Kelsey there on your team. Said I keep wanting to say Tyreek because it says T Hill, but it's Taysom Hill. Your kicker, Marr, you picked up from the Cowboys. He actually got you about 14 points there. Perhaps one of the big factors in the outcome of this matchup was your kicker crushing mine. And then the Steelers defense looked like they were going to run away and do pretty good, but they actually, so they had a couple turnovers, a sack, but they ended up losing the game. And even though the Colts ended up being pretty much the same as the Colts, I think the Colts defense actually got me a little bit more points in the end than the Steelers defense got you. But yeah, it ended up kind of being a wash there, surprisingly. But yeah, you're 149. This matchup sort of went down to Monday night. I think you had about a 12 or 13 point lead. You had Jeff Wilson. I had Ayuk, and Wilson pretty much immediately ripped off a 30-yard touchdown run. That's where most of his points came from. And Ayuk didn't do much of anything at all and outscored. So Wilson outscored him by about 6 points, which got you up there to like the 18-point margin here. Mahomes goes for 48. T goes for 25.5. Sutton 16. So Ayuk 7.7. Najee only 7.4. No, all rushing stats. Was not, I believe they said this was the first time in his whole career he did not receive a target in the game. And once they put Pickett in, they had two different times goal line carries that should have been Najee touchdowns. Pickett is like, no, I'm going to take them myself. Hopefully he stops doing that. That should have been 2 touchdowns for Najee on the board here. Dylan goes for 9.5. But the big factors, the rest of this matchup, was my Cowboys going against the Commanders there. Dalton Schultz, big 0, nothing, absolutely nothing from him. And Tony Pollard, 1.8. So my 2 Cowboys combined, only 1.8 points. That's not gonna do it ever for anybody. Yeah. What can you say? McManus goes for only like 3.5, and then again the Colts defense. Yahoo says 6, but I think it ended up being about 12 maybe. Our defenses pretty much canceled each other out. But Hillbillies on PCP gets the victory. He is also 2-2. Excuse me, and he is in 8th place, while the Springfield Isotopes, alone in the basement, 0-4, 12th place. Oh, and Brian, Hillbillies on PCP, despite victory this week, you are eliminated from the knockout pool by 0.9, looks like. Said you had 149. We'll just go right into this next matchup. Justin Darkwing Jutt scored 149.9. So he survived by less than a point, and even though you won the matchup this week, you were eliminated from the knockout pool. Darkwing Jet, like I said, he had 149.9. It was not nearly enough to get past Biscuits and Porn this week, who was one of the 3 teams over 200. He had 208.55. For Biscuits, this one was pretty much in hand from the get-go because Darkwing on Thursday night decided to take out Goff and put in Tua. And as we all know, Tua did not last very long in that game, and he only scored 10.5, while Goff scored 65 points. A 55-point difference here? 54.5. On the bright side, Justin, you still would have lost if you had started Goff. Just barely. If we add 54 points to your score there, 55, this would have been a really close matchup. It would have been way more painful, again, but yeah, you decided, as we know, you went with Tua, and he got out. I would imagine you're going to be rolling with Goff. Looks like, in hindsight now, that was a great pickup on your part there. Trey Lance gone. Tua, who knows what's going to go on with that situation for the rest of the year, between the concussion protocol, his injury, whatever his actual seriousness of his injuries are, and the investigations going on. It's going to be a controversial mess, I think, in Miami there with that for the rest of the year. Which it shocks me because I had forgotten until the time that they've got Teddy Bridgewater as their backup quarterback. He went in there and actually did fine. On Thursday night, they didn't win the game, but he was perfectly fine. A perfectly adequate backup there. There's certainly much worse backup quarterbacks in the league than Teddy Bridgewater, former starting quarterback for multiple teams there. So why they chose to risk Tua on a short week instead of putting Bridgewater out there, said again, capable of getting it done. So we had a lot of questions surrounding that Miami Dolphins team and quarterback and medical staff and decision making there. So anyway, enough about the loser of this matchup. Let's talk about the winner. Biscuits has Tom Brady go for 71.5. CeeDee Lamb, 21.5. Devontae Smith, who blew up last week, only goes for 4.5. Olav goes for 16.5. Eckler finally comes around for you. 3 touchdowns this week, 35 points. Scordarrelle Patterson scores a touchdown, gets you 9.8, but now he is on the temporary IR, which means, let's take a look at, Biscuits and Porn currently has no other running backs on his bench. He's got Brian Robinson coming back sooner or later, probably not soon enough to help you from his bullet wound injuries. But yeah, as of right now, Biscuits and Porn have no other running backs on their bench, so perhaps he will be making a play here on the waiver wire tonight. Mark Andrews only goes for 3.5 points. Singletary in the flex, 11.5 points. York, your kicker, goes for about 9. And the Bengals defense, Yahoo says 16. Looks like we bumped you up about 9 to 25 points there. But yeah, 70, 21, 35, and the 25, enough to get you past Darkwing Jet and over 200 this week. So Tua goes for only 10.5. Tyreek goes for 29 points. Pretty much the only person Bridgewater was throwing to. Mike Williams, 19. Marquise Brown, another touchdown for him, 21 points. Chubb, over 100 yards, touchdown, 23.5. James Conner, 10.5. Goddard, 12.5. Rashad Bateman in the flex, only 4.7. Kicker, Gay from the Rams, gets you about 8. And then the Cleveland Browns defense gets you about 10, maybe? Looks like. Didn't bump you up too much there. Definitely less than 6, so it must have been 3 to like 10 points there. But yeah, so as for Justin, he probably knew this one was over after Thursday night when he made that quarterback change and lost Tua. But the good news is, maybe it's not good news. Darkwing Jet, you actually, instead of being one of those 2-2s, you are now 1-3, unfortunately, and you are in 11th place. But you can't feel too bad knowing that you got Goff there. Looks like, like I said last week, his ceiling was going to be a consistent, like 40-point player every week. But he immediately jumps off for 65 points. However, I'm not sure. Detroit is going to play defenses as bad as Seattle every single week. They are definitely not. He didn't even have Amon-Ra St. Brown in this game. It was all Hawkinson and what's his name? Jamal Williams. Pretty much there. But yeah, so unfortunately, Justin, you got things. I mean, if Tua is out for a little while, the good news is Teddy Bridgewater was throwing to Tyreek and basically Tyreek only, which is good news for you. So you're 1-3, you're in 11th place, but definitely could be worse. And Biscuits and Porn, he moves to 3-1, and he is in 2nd place. Next, we got Disco versus Yinzer Jags. I don't know if this was the matchup of the week or not. I think it was. Was it Gags and Possum maybe? But anyway, as far as I was concerned, this was the matchup of the week, the one to watch, and it came down to Monday night as Disco had the San Francisco defense. Yinzer Jags had Cooper Kupp, but this one actually, I think Yinzer Jags was ahead a little bit until Stafford threw a pick 6 and then had another fumble late in the game, and that Rams didn't really do anything else other than throw the ball to Cooper Kupp. Fortunately for Disco, said he got that pick 6, couple turnovers in the end. Rams didn't really do too much in this game, only 3 field goals, 9 points. Results in a 20-point victory for Disco, 172.85 to 152.35 for Yinzer Jags. Disco has Russell Wilson go for 47. Scary Terry, only 3.5. Judy, 15. McKenzie, 12. Mixon goes for 17.5. Jonathan Taylor, only 3.3. Suffered an ankle injury. Fortunately, they're saying it's not as bad as they initially thought. Fortunately, but unfortunately, they are on a short week this week, playing Thursday night in Denver. So, looks like Taylor hasn't been practicing yet this week, so it's going to be questionable whether or not he plays. I would guess they choose to not play him this week, which means you would have to go with either pick up somebody off of waivers here. Your only other bench running back is Madison from the Vikings. I think Dalvin Cook is okay, but he did score a touchdown last week, even though Cook was still in there. But Cook is definitely fighting an injury, so maybe Madison won't be a terrible play. But yeah, you've got Gus Edwards in the IR spot there. He's still on the PUP list. Looks like. Don't know if he's going to be coming back soon. But yeah, we'll see. Same way with, I didn't say before, but same with Jim losing Scorderell, I should say. You could just move your running back who's in the flex up to a running back spot, throw a wide receiver in there or something like that. There are some things to do, so we'll see what happens this week coming up. But yeah, previewing next week is not my job. We got Waller, the baller, only 5.4 actually. Uncle Lenny goes for 18.5, finally gets a touchdown. McPherson goes for about 11, and again, the San Francisco defense, Yahoo says 25. We bumped you up a lot. I think they actually scored close to 40, 42 maybe, something like that. Ended up being a pretty good game for you. About 90 points or so, maybe low 90s from your buns, Russell Wilson and San Fran defense, and enough stuff in the middle there to get you past the Yinzer Jags. Josh Allen, only 43.5 points this week. I guess that's what happens. This is what happens when your quarterback doesn't score, doesn't bang out 77, 80 points for you every single week. You don't win. 40 said 43 and a half. Cooper Kupp, 14 catches, 26 and a half points. Gabe Davis, only 2.5. Amari Cooper, only 2. Saquon gets you 21. Melvin Gordon, despite losing Javonte Williams for the year to injury, he actually lost a fumble. That -2 was he wasn't able to cover that with his regular stats. Melvin Gordon actually scored you -1.2. Zach Ertz, 16.5. Godwin in the flex, 13. Folk, your kicker, goes for about 6.5. And the Chargers defense gets you about, looks like 20. Yahoo says 13. Looks like we jumped you up about 9. So 22, I want to say. But yeah, was not enough to get you past Disco this week. He gets his second victory. He is one of the 2-2s. He's in 9th place. Yizzer Jags drops from the top spot to 3rd place at 3-1. All right. We'll jump ahead to this one. Speaking of the top spot, the new king in town is Gags to Riches, knocking off Possum Magic this week. 211.55 to 172.7. So Gags had a couple people, I think, in that Seattle game. Big factor here. Unfortunately for Possum, Amon-Ra St. Brown missed this one. Definitely could have used him. Not sure if it would have made the difference. Actually made it because Hawkinson, as some of you may remember from the end of last year, when Amon-Ra was out, that's when Hawkinson goes crazy. And when Amon-Ra is in, then Amon-Ra takes all the looks from Goff. So it's kind of just bad luck and bad timing in terms of injury stuff, and going up against the guy with Hawkinson this week for Possum Magic. So Gags, 211.55. He has Kyler Murray go for 47. Diggs, only 10. Waddle, only 6. But DK goes off for 22 points before getting carted to the locker room to take a shit, apparently. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, CEH, he actually scores 2 touchdowns this week, goes for 22.5 points. Actually, one of the first times getting to watch Kansas City this week on that, was it the Sunday night game? Tampa Bay and Kansas City there. Edwards-Helaire looks like he is running for his job, which he probably is, but he looks like he's just so this is the first time actually really watching one of their games. He looks like he is running hard with aggression and an attitude. Running because they said they drafted Pacheco this year. He actually looked like he was running pretty hard too. So Edwards-Helaire seems like something drafting Pacheco looks like it's lit a fire under CEH's ass, and he's actually giving it his best this year, doing what he can. 92 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, 22.5 points there. So good pick for Gags. It's turning out. Rashad Penny, another one in this, I forgot to mention, in this Seattle-Detroit game. He goes off for over 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, 31.5 points. Hawkinson, again, he goes off for 43, over 175 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns. Samuel in the flex goes for 8. Bass, your kicker, goes for about 11. And the Patriots defense. I think Yahoo, with the scoring there a little bit, actually gave you more points than you got. I think you actually lost 3. Yahoo says 16. I believe New England's actual score was only 13. But it was still enough to get past Possum Magic this week, who had Jalen Hurts. What was the difference here? 28 and 11 is 39. So about 39 points. Jalen Hurts only goes for 33. Probably his season low. 2 weeks ago, he did 64. So you probably expected about 50 points from him. Kind of a disappointing performance there. So yeah, like a lot of different things that could affect each matchup. Cooks, your wide receivers here. Cooks, Pittman, and Dortch. Cooks goes for 18.5. Pittman only 6. Dortch only 1.6. See what you got on the bench there. So Amon-Ra was out. Elijah Moore, not too much there. Really, said the big problem here for you was Josh Jacobs on the bench. But you've got Aaron Jones, you've got Herbert with no Montgomery, you've got Pierce. Jacobs was the odd man out, I guess. It's easy to look back and see what you should have done differently, but got no problem with those 3 players going in your starting lineup there, those running backs. Unfortunately, the one you picked against is the one who blew up. Herbert went for 11. Hurst, 11.7. Dameon Pierce actually went for, he had 29, so 32, because he had a long touchdown bonus for you there. Dameon Pierce, 32 points. Joseph, your kicker, a bunch of field goals in this game. He actually got you about 17 or 18 points. And then the Dallas Cowboys defense, Yahoo says 14. Looks like we bumped you up to about 26 or so, something like that. But yeah, unfortunately, Possum wasn't enough. Said bad luck with Amon-Ra out this week. Hawkinson goes off. Penny goes off. All these different things. Just some bad luck, but Possum Magic, you're 2-2, as is most of the league. So things could definitely be worse after this week. So can't be too upset going forward. I think Amon-Ra's injury isn't very serious, so he should be back soon. We'll see what you decide to do there. You might be putting Josh Jacobs back in. I don't know how much longer Montgomery is going to be out, but once he comes back, then Herbert will probably be heading back to your bench there. But yeah, you're 2-2. You're in 6th place, so you're in pretty good position right now, despite the loss. While Gags to Riches, like I said, he is now 3-1, and he jumps up to the number 1 spot. He is in 1st place. All right, and then we skipped over Ed Logger versus the Dub C Hooligans this week. And Ed Logger jumps out and goes for 216 points, 216.1, knocking off Dub C Hooligans 168.9. For Logger, Derek Carr, only 34.5 points. Thielen, 15.2. Garrett Wilson, 6. But then Mike Evans goes off for 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, 30.5. Newly acquired Jamal Williams playing. Traded Gallup to him for Gags for him. Excuse me. Since Swift is going to be out for a little bit, you picked up his backup. Turned out to be a great play this week as Williams went for 27. Dalvin goes for 10.5. Higbee, surprising player here this week. He actually had 10 catches. He goes for 17.5. Miles Sanders goes off for 130 yards, 2 touchdowns. I guess I was a year too early on him. 32.5 points. Carlson, your kicker, goes for about 12 or 13. And then another interesting plug and play that worked out for you. The Giants defense going against Chicago. 6 sacks, several turnovers there. Yahoo says 21. Looks like they got about 30. So, yeah, pretty good score from your defense. You had several at 30. Let's see. 34, 30, 27, 32, 30. So, yeah, that was enough to push you over 200 points to 216 and get you past the Dub C Hooligans this week. He had Lamar Jackson only go for 32.5, but Jefferson popped off Sunday morning for 31. Debo on Monday night goes off for 23.5. Lazard scored. He actually did not score a touchdown. He had 17.5 points. Pretty good yardage total there from him. McCaffrey, they must have watched the podcast or watched the review last week, decided to start throwing him the ball. This week he had 9 catches for 81 yards and a receiving touchdown. Looks like that's where most of his stats came from. 25.8. But the big one here was Javonte Williams going on IR after scoring 3.7. tearing his ACL and I believe his LCL or something like that. They said. Does it say? Let's check here. Does it say? Yeah, ACL and LCL. Gonna be also some pretty severe damage in his knee there. Unfortunately, promising guy, looked good in week 1. They threw a lot of passes to him. But just yeah, hate to see it. It's gonna be a long road back for him. We'll be surprised if he's back at the beginning of next year. Might be in sometime, probably sometime next year, but I would be surprised if with those injuries, if he's back at the beginning of next year. But WC, looks like you got Edmonds on your bench, you got Stevenson on your bench, you got Pacheco on your bench. We'll see if you make any moves on the waiver wire here. Yeah, you're actually, I mean, it sucks losing a guy that good, but you do have some depth there to be able to pop Williams down to an IR spot and throw one of those running backs in there, and maybe so you could move James Robinson to one of the running back spots and put whoever you want in the flex there. You have like a ton of running backs and very little in terms of wide receiver depth. So kind of lucky for you that one of your I guess one way of looking at it is you're kind of lucky that it was one of your running backs that went down because you got a whole stable of them there on your bench here. So, but yeah, unfortunately, didn't want to see that. But Williams looks like he is going to be done. Gerald Everett, 17 points this week, perhaps the best final draft pick. Mr. What do they call the guy who always gets Mr. Irrelevant? The guy who gets picked last in the draft. Where is it? Oh, he's back. He was right there, I believe. Gerald Everett, perhaps the greatest Mr. Irrelevant pick of all time. Turn it out for you. 17 points from him. James Robinson, only 3 points from him this week. Kind of surprising there, but they didn't do too much. Eagles defense really shut Jaguars down. Koo, your kicker, goes for about 12, and the Tampa Bay defense Patrick Mahomes looked like he was on a mission to take them out this week. They gave up a ton of points, a ton of yards. They lost the game. Yahoo says 6, and I believe we actually dropped you down. Their score must have actually only been 3. Yeah, because they lost the game. They gave up too much of everything. Lost the game. So they had 3 sacks and a turnover. The loss takes away 3 of those points. So yeah, your actual score for Tampa Bay's defense must have been only 3. But yeah, Ed Logger still took this one by, 30, 46, 47, 48 points. So it would have taken a lot from Dub C to get past him this week. So Lamar Jackson, for him, a pretty quiet game. He's not going to score you 70 points every single week either. But yeah, Dub C can't be too upset in this defeat. Just like some of the other people after this week said you're 2-2. Both of you and Ed Logger are both now 2-2. Dub C is in 4th place, and Ed Logger, despite winning this one, is right below him in 5th place. All right, I think that is everything. We got Josh first. We got Gags and 3, Ed, Detling, Justin, and Brian. All right, yeah, we got everything there. Said Brian, the Hillbillies on PCP are eliminated from the knockout pool this week. Let's see. Biscuits and Porn, Springfield Isotopes, Disco, and Hillbillies on PCP are the first 4 teams eliminated from the knockout pool so far. Yeah. So we got nobody is undefeated anymore. We got 3 teams sitting there at 3-1. Although Gags has a couple big weeks here. So Yinzer Jags, who was in first place, is actually trailing Gags now by almost 100 points. Biscuits is ahead of him by 22. So Topster down there at 0-4. So before I forget, did a little research here last night just to see where we're at in terms of being 0-4. As far as I could go back was, I think, 2011. I tried to go to 2010. as you may, some of you who were, I think not everybody, but most of you were around back then. Actually, a bunch of you probably weren't. That was back whenever Detling still did the scores, like updated the scores, and I think Disco figured some of the stuff out. And that was still in the time period where I would double check the scores just to make sure, because we were kind of doing them by hand. And then I would post, once I had the scores, would post post them every week on the message board there. And then would post the actual the correct scores and the correct standings. I think Detling just went in and kind of tinkered with it. So the point is, during that period, the actual matchups week to week weren't always correct. But also, what I'm trying to say is, that far back, it seems like Yahoo is starting to not keep the message boards in the archive there. I went back to I think they were there before, but in 2010, I was not able to access the message board anymore. I think I was for 2011 because I was able to go in there. But yeah, I guess they must be years further back, but that kind of takes away our record of exactly what happened. Even though it says on Yahoo, it's still, just like you see the matchups and you can look at the schedule and the playoffs and everything. So when Detling was still running things, that stuff was not always accurate, unfortunately. But anyway, the point is, 0-4. The Topes are 0-4. What happens? Has anyone else ever been? The question for me was, has anyone else ever been 0-5? Answer is yes, but not very often. The last time anyone started 0-5 was 2018. Aforementioned, whenever Detling was going on his little rant there, that was the year that Jimmy Huber was completely distracted by family stuff, art school, planning his wedding, didn't really pay much attention to anything that was going on in the league. He actually that year started out 0-11. Unprecedented in Tonto's Demise history. An 0-11 start. I believe he ended up 1-12 because there were only 13 games, and I believe his final record was 1-12. Obviously, he did not make the playoffs. In 2015, once again, Jimmy Huber started the season 0-5. Ended up that season 1-12 also. But we had two people in 2015 start 0-5. One of those was also Brian. So since 2010, it's 2011, 5 teams have gone started 0-5. 2 of them were Jimmy, 2 of them were Brian, and one was Jeff Fantic was his team name. Does anybody remember that guy, Jeff? Anyway, in 2015, so Jimmy Huber said he started 0-5, ended up 1-12. Brian started 0-5, ended up 5-8. And then in 2012, that was when Fantic, Jeff, he started 0-6 and ended up 3-10. And then in 2011, which is far back as I could go, Brian, again, started 0-5, ended up at 4-8. The thing about that is, 0-5 is like if you get to that point, 0-5, that is like the, what's the word I'm looking for? That's the crucial point where there's the point of no return, I guess I should say, because a lot of teams even though they didn't start 0-4, ended up being, like looking at teams' schedules, a lot of teams went 1-4, 1-5, 1-6. But only those couple teams started 0-5. But yeah, once you get to that point, it seems like that is. So I know because last year I was 1-4, that would mean pretty much have to win this week to be in the same spot where I was last year. Ended up going on a playoff run there, so even at 1-4, you're still not. I would say you're still not out of it. But if you get to 0-5, you are in dire straits. Your team is on the ropes, on life support. Your playoff chances. So it's been done from 1-4, but it has never been done from 0-5. You are pretty much starting to think about next year before it's even Halloween. But anyway, so yeah, that was just a little dive into Tonto's Demise history for you guys to see how many times anyone has started 0-5, since it's looking like that very well could happen this year. Let's take a quick peek at what the matchups are coming up here. Topes are going up against Ed Lager. His team just went off last week, so hopefully they'll cool off and hopefully able to get a victory finally. Biscuits versus Gags, number 1 versus number 2. That's going to be a great matchup. Got to be the matchup of the week, I would guess. Yeah, that's going to be fun to watch. 2 high projections there. Shawshank versus Darkwing. Saquon versus Disco. 2-2-2 teams there. Yinzers versus Dub C. That should be, even higher projections than Gags and Biscuits there. That should be a fun one to watch too. And then Hillbillies versus Possum. Another 2-2 matchup there. So one of those teams will be 2-3. We'll definitely have at least 2, maybe 3, 2-3 teams this week. So I'm already thinking about chasing and trying to climb up the ladder here. Can't get behind by too many games here already. Said 2 games behind most of the league. I got to turn things around real quick. Although by quite a wide margin, the Topes are the lowest scoring team in the league so far this year. Nothing going right. I think that's pretty much it. But anything else to say? I think just pointing out to Brian, said last week that it's perfect. It is completely true that I understand that it didn't happen, but my first 2 little losses in week 1 was basically because T. Higgins got concussed. It's just bad luck. I'm not saying that I should have won the matchup, or I know that I didn't lose it. It's just that's the way it goes. But again, it was bad luck that he got concussed out of the game, and the obviously got blown out in week 2. But then in week 3, matchup was actually kind of close too, but it came down to just those little things that went wrong. Said T. Higgins should have had that touchdown. He had both his feet in, but they said no, and then it missed field goal. So just little things that could have gone differently and made the season very much different for myself and a couple other people here. So I'm not whining and saying that I should have won those games. I didn't. It's what happens. But again, just saying that it's been some bad luck this year so far. Things could have 1 or 2 things different here and there in each game, and so things could have been very different at this point in time. So that's just what it is. Not whining about the losses or anything, or saying that I should have won when I didn't. But just pointing out that they were close matchups that just had some bad luck. Things could have gone either way, but but anyway, I understand that the Wizard always has a target on his back, so it's fun to take shots and be a good sport about it. So all right, I think that's it. Say this every week, but it's not. Nobody's listening. They're only listened to the throw Christian McCaffrey the ball part of the review last week, because the injuries are really still happening. Javante was the big one this week, so we'll see what happens. Oh yeah. So we will see you back here to discuss the results from week 5. Hopefully, may all your players meet or exceed expectations this week. Nobody gets hurt, and we all have everybody has a good time. Everybody's happy. Nobody actually loses, even though half of us will. And we meet back here next week. Thanks for listening, watching, or whatever it is you do. Wave to Kevin. Maybe he's watching while he cleans up dog piss off of his kitchen floor there. So, all right, guys, thanks, and we'll see you next week. Bye bye.